money was coming in from Shopify and we were getting these bigger payouts, we were thinking, great, we're rich, we can go spend our money and enjoy that. And that was the hard lesson that we were like, oh, we actually need to reinvest.
You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions, presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Maggie Outridge and Tim Rogers, the co-founders over at ST ARGO. Maggie, Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Hello, thank you for having us on.
I'm so excited to dive in with all this. Can we start out with an overview of what ST ARGO is?
We're a pet accessories brand from Australia, online based, and we started up in 2019 and here we are 6 years later.
Can you talk to me about how the two of you started the brand together? And we'll get into your growth story in just a couple minutes. But let's start out. How did you get started?
So the brand very much started from we want to start a side hustle. I think I was studying law at the time. Tim was in finance, so very different to where we are today and what industry we're in today. But it was really a case of Tim coming home one day, he just picked us up coffee. I was still in bed. We were both working jobs that we weren't completely satisfied with. And Tim said, we need to start a side hustle. So the idea of business started there, of us both being like, we need to do something else. I think we were looking for a creative outlet. The actual brand came from, we were kind of thinking of some ideas for a little while. By a little while, probably half a day. It came quite quickly. Tim's mum had just purchased a puppy and it was a really small dog too. She was looking for a cute carrier for this dog. And at the time she couldn't find anything. So ST ARGO actually started out as mostly doing vegan leather carriers. So we wanted a designer handbag looking carrier that wasn't designer handbag price, but looked like a cage. Basically everything else on the market wasn't really that aesthetic. So ST ARGO, it was that we need to do something creative. And then it was, okay, we're going to do this. We can't find anything like it on the market. Let's just do this and roll with it. And we've never looked back.
Amazing. Well, I think the big theme I really want to pick your brain on today is talking a little about cash flow. And listeners, for context, ST ARGO has grown massively in the past couple of years. And in my experience, a lot of bootstrapped e-com businesses end up dealing with a really big issue with cash flow, especially if they experience really explosive growth. So high level, talk to me about some of your favorite tactics to balance cash on hand as you've been scaling up the business like crazy over the past couple of years.
Yeah, look, I think so you mentioned that growth that we saw, and yes, we're at a much greater position now than what we were a few years ago, but it's not, the trajectory just isn't always in that upright position. Like it does waver as well. And what we found is that managing your cash flow is everything. When we started seeing sales come in and we saw that money was coming in from Shopify and we were getting these bigger payouts, we were thinking, great, we're rich, we can go spend our money and enjoy that. And that was the hard lesson that we were like, oh, we actually need to reinvest because we sold out and we're out of stock and we couldn't afford to make another order. So then we had to get on some financing and then go through that period, which, look, it's a good lesson to have because now that we're in a much better position where we're very conservative and try to stay away from taking too much out of the business, because we know when you reinvest in your business that's doing well, then that just compounds on itself.
If you're terrified about what AI means for how customers find you online, I have some good news for you. SEO, Meta ads, and Google ads are still going to drive the lion's share of your customers in 5 years. But these platforms are evolving. We help e-commerce brands grow and future-proof their methods of gaining new customers. Interested in hearing more? Reach out to us at intergrowth.com/CGS to book a complimentary strategy session with our team. Once again, that's intergrowth.com/CGS. All right, back to the show.
I hear that misconception a lot when there's, let's say, people taking an outward look at e-com brands, and they'll say, "Oh, your business hit $1 million in annual revenue. That's amazing. You must be paying yourself really well." And the
Yeah.
reality is that's very rarely the case until you hit a much higher figure in terms of revenue.
And it's something that the book from Phil Knight, called Shoe Dogs, he talks about cash flow a lot in that. And he talks about he never felt rich when he had Nike until he finally went public. And then it was just all a number as well. But he was working another job at the same time. He understood from similar lessons that we've had is taking money from that business is going to harm your business a lot. Obviously, if it's you're using your business to put food on the table, you need to do that. But yeah, it's a big lesson in just don't be excessive with what you take from the.
Don't get too excited. And read that book, Shoe Dogs. That's something that Tim read as we were starting out. And I think there's a commonality between a lot of startups bootstrapping with that book. And it can put your mind at ease a little bit that, like you said, just because you do X amount in sales, that's not X amount in your bank account. That's my tip for there as well.
And listeners, we'll share a link to Shoe Dog in the show notes as well. Definitely check out that book. So, Tim, you had started to mention that there was some financing that you took out as you were looking to really reach that next hurdle of growth. Can you talk to us a little about those financing sources that you two looked into?
Yeah, no problem. So look, when we started the business 2019, first year, pretty slow growth. We're just trying to find our feet, understand what we're really trying to even market as a brand. It wasn't until we met up with some other founders of other businesses and they were giving us strategies and advice that we really started to see some growth. And that really coincided with COVID-19, which was one, everyone started to shop online a lot more. And two, everyone started buying puppies. So that meant it was great for St. Argo because we were able to, look, there was obviously a lot of hard times that people were going through during COVID-19. That was one of the weird side benefits that came to us during COVID-19. And yeah, we saw this massive demand. We sold out of our best sellers and we knew, okay, we need to be making a much larger order, which we didn't have the cash for at that time. So after getting pushed back from grandparents and cousins that we thought was doing well in business, I think that they wanted us to learn the lesson ourselves, which I'm very grateful for now. And yeah, we went to the big banks, rejected there because our business didn't have strong enough financials yet and didn't have, I think it was 3 years at the time they wanted to see in financials. So that was waving goodbye at the 5% to 7% sort of loans. And then we were just doing research on like who actually lends to some small businesses that were in a situation like ours. And it was really the high interest lenders. I think the loan we ended up getting was about, I think it was 19% interest on that loan that we were able to get at the time. And we were weighing it up and we looked at the numbers in our sales forecasts and we were like, look, this will benefit us by getting it. It's not great. And every time I looked at that crazy interest number, I hated seeing it. But it's what we had to do at that time, taking on that interest. And it helped us fulfill that demand. But yeah, it was very hard after the demand sort of slows up a bit and we're repaying that high interest debt. That's stopping us from reinvesting into our business a lot, which slowed down new price releases, which made our brand feel to the consumer like there's nothing new going on, which really harmed growth over that period. Again, tough learning lesson. We came through the other side, but I know a lot of businesses that don't come out the other side. So definitely be careful with some of the high interest loans. It was necessary in our situation, but you really need to look at your own forecast and be real with yourself and think, is this going to be something that I can pay back and it's going to be beneficial for the business? Or am I just trying to survive when this business is really already dead?
Absolutely. When to your point, one of the big things I'm hearing there is you had the good fortunes of having a product that was in, or products that were in really high demand. People wanted what you were selling. So that it sounds like through that high interest loan, you were able to stay afloat as a business. But the sense I'm getting from what you're sharing is that it stunted your growth a year, 2 years down the road, once that growth started to stall out a little bit as we kind of reached the end of COVID. In hindsight, I'm curious if, let's say you could go and talk to yourselves from 2019, 2020, what advice would you give to that younger self about how to approach alternate forms of financing, whether it was the right move for the business, wrong move for the business? You can go take a time machine. What advice are you sharing from there?
Yeah, I think it would probably be, which is, I don't know, when you have a small business that you've just started, you feel like everything is a rush and you have this small time frame to make something work. And look, in some cases that it is the case, but I'd probably say to myself, like, look, the loans for us to satisfy the demand, we obviously had to take it. I would probably say be more conservative with the amount that you take on, because the high interest lenders, although the banks and everyone don't want to give you money, the high interest lenders want to give you
More than we probably need. And I think we probably got more than we need, which was great in the short term, but then it's at 17%, and 19% of that. So as you mentioned, that still was chasing after us a couple of years down the line. And that meant we could satisfy the immediate demand, but we didn't have anything left over for, as Tim was saying, more product development, better marketing. We couldn't really push the brand any further than what that original amount allowed for. So that stopped growth for us, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. But like, I probably still wouldn't go in a time machine and tell myself that, because I feel like
good lesson.
Mistakes are really good. And right now we're in a position with St. Argo where we could be giving ourselves a hefty salary from it, but we're still doing other consulting gigs. And we've got other things on the side that we try to use for us to be able to put food on the table, because that was such a steep learning curve, big lesson for us, that we never want to go back to that stage. So it's almost scared us so much into being like, even if it's doing well, we don't.
You say there, you keep all the money there, you keep growing, let's reinvest absolutely every cent, and we don't take anything anymore, which, I mean, we've just gotten used to that.
Yeah, and it helps if you care about the business that you have and like the products that you're putting out there and the branding pieces, because I don't care about not taking money from the business if I can have a really cool photo shoot, or if I can put our brand, get more exposure out there and reach more eyeballs. So look, there's the side of it, you look at it personally, but if you're really passionate about your brand, then that won't really feel like too much of a pinch not taking that money.
I love hearing all that. One of the things, obviously, you both mentioned you're still working other jobs, other consulting projects that it sounds like really helps to pay the bills. I'm curious, is there a certain milestone that the two of you have in the back of your mind about, hey, once St. Argo reaches this particular stage, that's when we feel comfortable starting to pay ourselves a little bit of money, or starting to pay ourselves 25% of what we take on as our normal salary, and we can live a slightly more lavish lifestyle?
Don't have a milestone. I mean, I enjoy working. If it got to a point, probably for me, where I was overwhelmed and I wasn't enjoying other things that I was doing, then I would probably take a step back. But I don't think I would think about it in terms of like financially, just because we both enjoy working. I think, well, that's for me personally. Yeah. Do you have a milestone?
Look, I don't have a milestone, just because, like I said, with the like enjoyment factor, and look, I enjoy being able to see cash flow get to a point where I'm like, all right, well, we can invest in a better photo shoot, or we can put through bigger purchase orders, or we can try and spend more money on this new sample of this concept that we have coming up for a product. So
yeah,
when your business is interesting and you have other ways of putting food on the table, then there's no real like milestone or goal that I have there.
I think it's like $25,000 as an example. I would prefer to see what that does for St. Argo than like me using that in my phone and just having
A handbag or something.
Yeah, like it might not be that way all the time. I think we're probably pretty fluid with it. We're pretty 6 years in, like I still see like that we've got a lot to do with it. But that's kind of how I think about it. I would prefer to see it with St. Argo than me spending it, because we've done that and it was not fun in the end.
And on a personal level as well, we live quite nomadic. Like we spend time in countries and we really take advantage of the digital nomad sort of setup that we can have. So even that, there's not really any big temptations for spending. There's not like the keeping up with the Jones sort of situation, which I know is very big in Australia, of looking at neighbor and being like, oh, they've got that car, I want to get this car. We're really living a life where we're not.
I don't really want for anything.
Yeah, which is a nice position to be in.
I was going to say, that's not a bad spot to be in. I love that. So I don't want to put you in the spot and ask you for specific dollar amounts that you have in the company account. But what I'd love to hear your thoughts on is there maybe like a certain month's worth of expenses that you would ideally have sitting in the St. Argo bank account? So you have that as kind of a buffer, either to fund the next big purchase order, to fund the next big marketing project. What's your take there?
I always feel like I'm behind with that. So I always feel like I'm chasing with that. And I feel like I always think to myself, like, especially after a strong sales period like Black Friday, it'd be great to keep that cash buffer in our account and see that 20K or something just sitting there. But as soon as that's there, then we straight away think to, all right, opportunity. And yes, it's risk, but it's that risk versus reward. And but we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for taking the first risk of leaving our jobs and trying to start e-commerce business. So look, we're always behind, and even with sometimes the big purchase orders that we have coming up, we might be looking at it being like, all right, how are we going to pay for this? And it creates that bit more of a grind to be like, all right, well, maybe we should be emailing our retailers more, being like, are you putting your orders now? Or it should be putting out more emails to our email subscribers and trying to push on ways to bring in the cash influx rather than already having it there. So I feel like we have a very growth mindset there, where if money is in the bank, then it's like a waste.
Yeah, well, it's out of the bank, because if it's in the bank, okay, well, now we have it, we can make this mold, we can pay for this mold fee for this new product concept, or we can bring out a new colorway, or we're in that growth mindset. Probably.
Yeah.
I'm like not even sure if I want to even recommend this to your listeners, because it's not for the weak either, because it creates like a lot of stress, but it has gotten us to a point where we have achieved the growth through putting every single dollar available back into the business. It's helped that our business is working, but I'm not going to recommend that to someone where they're not seeing any real traction yet. That makes sense.
People ask me all the time, should I be using ChatGPT to create content for my site? So here's the thing. AI is great at quickly spitting out blog content. It's also great at pissing off your following. If you've spent years building your brand and follower base, why would you risk that all with AI-generated content? At Intergrowth, we work with companies that see their brand as an asset to get more customers through human-crafted articles that your customers look for online. We master your brand voice and work with your team to write the best articles on the internet that bring you customers on autopilot from search engines like Google. Interested in hearing more? Reach out to us at intergrowth.com/CGS to book a complimentary strategy session with our team.
Well, just building upon what you were saying there, and this is one of the big themes I've heard echoed throughout a lot of what you've been sharing so far, is both of you maintaining other sources of income. It sounds like has kind of become like this competitive advantage for you, because you've been able to reinvest every dollar into the business. And I really wish more e-com founders took that same approach of saying, hey, I know it's going to be a grind, but I'm going to stay at my full-time job, or I'm going to keep these 2 consulting projects that I'm currently working on so that I can invest every dollar back into the business. It frees you up for this incredible growth opportunities, and it gives you financial peace of mind to know, hey, if our business has a rough 2-3 months, I don't need to worry about paying myself a salary. Because of that, maybe we have a little extra in the bank account, or we have a little extra inventory already sitting in our warehouse that we can lean on instead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard on. I think the biggest thing to overcome is your own ego in that situation, because especially when you go from being like, oh, I own my own business, and I call up my own shots and everything, it's hard to go back to a situation where you're helping out other businesses, because you worry a lot about what other people think, being like, oh, well, they probably think that my business isn't doing too well, which, look, once you overcome that, then you don't look back, really. And it's that initial hurdle that holds people back so much, the ego, but the benefits from doing it completely outweigh it, to the point that I'm at now where I'm happy doing it. And a lot of the consulting that I do is for a PPC agency, so focusing on paid ads and all that. And I've learned so much that I've been able to bring back into St. Argo through working at that agency as well. So there's a lot of like knowledge transfer, and you can put yourself in a position where you can actually learn so much and apply it to your own business in areas that you might have been lacking.
So last theme I wanted to pick your brain on today is getting a little bit of an inside look to, I'm going to broadly say, payment terms for larger retailers. Traditionally, what I've heard from a lot of brands is when you're partnering with retailers, you have to be far more mindful of cash flow, especially with larger retailers. Oftentimes, they're going to push for much more or much less beneficial payment terms. So I'm curious, how have you navigated that? And can you give listeners an inside look into what you would see as maybe like in the realm of normal for expectations for partnering with a big retailer?
Yeah. Well, look, it depends if they want you or you want them. So if they reach out to you, then you're going to have the upper hand and be able to negotiate a lot more. And we've had that, for example, like part of a lot of e-commerce businesses where they reach out to this like the golden ticket retailer, and like you would sell your first child to in order to be able to get stocked in their store or something. So there's those retailers that they understand that you want them so bad, so they will put ridiculous payment terms out there. A lot of them, what I've seen in the pet space anyway, usually sit at about 90-day payment terms, 90 days end of month as well. So that's like, it's not always 90 days from that moment, but it'll be at the end of the month as well, just as a little sweetener. But we've partnered with some retailers where they've reached out to us, they've seen our product, they've seen our brand, and we've been able to negotiate down from 90 days to 45 days because they wanted us, and we were very clear to them that as a small business, we can't afford to just have cash out of our accounts for that long. So if you want to, if you want to stock our products, then this is really the only way. So it really depends on that. What's helped us a lot in the initial phases was partnering with small retailers. We list our products on Faire. I know a lot of businesses in the US list their products on Faire, the wholesale platform. Look, there's great terms out there for small businesses. Oh, it sounds like I'm a salesman for Faire right now, but there's a lot of incentives for even the businesses that are looking for products to put through orders. So they've got like 60-day payment terms where Faire won't charge the purchaser for 60 days, but as the business, we get paid out right away. So they're like the middleman there. So it's really looking out for both parties. And that's a good way to pair with businesses that will pay you upfront.
Amazing. And within that, in your experience, when you're going into the negotiations, whether it's a small retailer or large retailer, which of those items do you find you had the best success maybe negotiating back on versus what are the things that there is zero chance you're going to be able to negotiate, let's say with this big retailer on this one thing?
Yeah, there's with some contracts there's been like weird clauses where there's like a 5% on top of it for marketing contribution and things that honestly I don't even understand what they truly mean. I just look at them like maybe even throw that in ChatGPT and say, what is this actually mean? Usually like the days, like the payment terms, like the 90-day net, that can usually be adjusted with conversations. But the finer terms like the marketing clauses, I find difficult because they keep that standard across all of the vendors that they have. So they don't really want to change that in terms of the intake margin. So like if you're selling your product to 50% standard, like for example, we'll sell our products wholesale for 50% off retail. Usually the bigger retailers will want something a bit sweeter than
55 or 60. And often they will dig their feet in on that. The bigger they are, our biggest is 60, and there's no room for leniency, I don't think, no matter how many years we're with them and no matter how many orders they place. I think they'll always kind of be pushing for that 60. Smaller retailers, 50 is pretty standard. We don't really negotiate that down anymore. Like, we're happy with that. We've built the margins into our pricing, but there's some nuances there between the smaller ones and the bigger ones and what kind of discount they're going to want as well. So that's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah, especially if you're starting a business, you want to make sure that you're setting up the pricing, not just thinking about your own e-commerce store, but thinking about your growth. And if you want to be getting in with retailers, then you got to make sure that your margins can actually handle it, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're making very, very, very slim and you're selling to a big retailer and you're putting all this time and effort into something that isn't actually profitable whatsoever.
Fascinating. Well, Tim, Maggie, this has been amazing. For listeners who want to buy St. Argo, where can they find you guys online?
They can find us at our website, www.saint-argo.com, or you could just type St. Argo into Google and it'll pop up.
Just don't click on the paid ads.
And what about social channels? Where can they find you guys on social?
Yeah, so we're on TikTok, again, St. Argo, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest as well. Check out Pinterest. Our Pinterest is beautiful, but we're all over everything. Again, if you type St. Argo in, it'll come up everywhere.
Yeah, and look, for your listeners as well, if you have any questions, follow-up questions, feel free to shoot them our way as well. I do enjoy chatting about business, and look, we've learned from a lot of mistakes that we've made. So if we can help you not repeat those mistakes, then yeah, we'd be happy to connect.
Amazing. Well, once again, listeners, this is Maggie Outridge and Tim Rogers, the co-founders over at St. Argo. Maggie, Tim, thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.